Welcome to another episode of Depth, Not Just Headlines, with me, Deborah Anderson. Today we'll be looking at the question being asked by millions of people across the globe. How many of the coronavirus cases are actually COVID-19? That's a question that's yet to be answered. You go on the World Health Organization's page, you go on CDC, you ask officials, but we're still yet to hear what really is, a number. We know that we can't get the actual total figure at this point in time, but give us an idea. But the reason we're not able to hear the answer to those questions is because they themselves really do not know. In fact, one of the very disappointing things right now is the fact that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration recommends that healthcare providers continue to use serological tests intended to detect antibodies to SARS-CoV-2 to help identify people who may have been exposed to it or have recovered from the COVID-19 infection. Now, that makes no sense to me because in one breath they're saying they recommend the continued use of it, but in the next breath they're also saying that it's not clear, right? So therefore it should not be used, right? And they've gone on to lambast firms that have been putting word out there that they have recommended this, and they are saying that they'll be taking action against them. But you're recommending it, and at the same time you're disclaiming it. So what exactly is the FDA's position on this situation? Okay, so some firms are falsely claiming that their serological tests are FDA approved or authorized, or falsely claiming that these tests can diagnose COVID-19. The FDA will take appropriate action against firms and making falsely or who are making false claims or marketing tests that are not accurate and reliable. That I just read to you from the actual FDA website. In addition, the FDA encourages healthcare providers to report any adverse events or suspected adverse events experienced with serological tests. Now, you're recommending these tests and then you're asking for people to report adverse effects. Now, that to me makes absolutely no sense. To me, that's a double standard. You take a position, one or the other. You're recommending it, and then you take whatever criticisms come your way. But you can't on one hand say, hey, I'm not recommending it. But on the other, you say, well, use it, but just in case. Like, you're toying with people's lives here at this point in time. I mean, serological tests can play a critical role in the fight against COVID-19, right? But at this point in time, the FDA itself said that, it's not at this point in time. It's in the future. This may potentially be used to help determine, together with other clinical data, whether these individuals are less susceptible to infection, right? So I want to look at what is plasma donation, because, plasma donation is what they use to, try to get the antibodies from the people who have been victim of COVID-19. So we're going to say plasma is a component of your blood, right? And to donate plasma, blood is drawn from your body and processed through a machine that separates and collects the plasma. The other components of the blood, such as the red cells, are returned to your body mixed with saline to replace the withdrawn plasma. All right? Now, listen to this. Experts say it could take up to 2 weeks or more after recovery for some people to have or develop antibodies. 2 weeks. Now, how do you, right? It could also take more. So it could be 3 weeks, it could be a month. They didn't specify. So therefore, the results can be flawed, leaving customers, or the consumers rather, shortchanged. Experts believe that while there is an urgent need for the vaccines, proper validation of tests is imperative to prevent falsified results. If a false positive occurs, it means the antibody was from some other form of coronavirus. That's coming from the experts. So at the end of the day, they are admitting that there are still many other cases of coronavirus out there other than COVID-19, and that could end up giving you a false positive, right? When you get those antibodies. So it could be for something other than COVID-19. So we're saying, or what we're asking right now is, what is really the FDA's stance on this whole situation, right? How do we curb it? How do we stop, these entities or these firms from going out there and selling these antibodies, right, for or these serological tests, right, for COVID-19, when it's really hard to determine at this point in time if most of these cases are even COVID-19 related. Okay? One entity carrying out major testing right now, they're actually advertising for it. It's UCSF, and that is the University of California, San Francisco. So they, along with researchers at Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital, they are working with Vitalant, a major local blood center, to collect plasma. And I explained to you what plasma is, and that's the liquid portion of the blood, right? From people who have recovered from COVID-19. Remember, you can't say they've recovered from COVID-19 when you haven't even tested fully yet to know if they had COVID-19 or some other form of coronavirus, right? Other researchers will then transfuse this blood into patients with COVID-19 to study if it helps treat the disease. Now, this is a lengthy process, not an overnight process, because remember, determining COVID-19 takes some time, right? So you can't just say, hey, let's see if this works so we can make a quick vaccine. That's not how it works. But what this research group at UCSF is doing, they are encouraging people that once they get tested, if they could come back 7 days later, you're not forced to come, right? But they encourage you to come back to be retested, because once you're retested, they get a clearer data. So they, at least one entity there, is trying to make a sustained effort to ensure that they get the tests correct, right, before they present these vaccines. So I'm encouraging everyone out there to really push for answers. Don't just jump. If you or a family member is infected, or or you're showing signs of COVID-19, I would suggest that you do not just take any random vaccine that's being flaunted out there, because it's highly likely that it was not approved by the FDA. And even if it's one that the FDA recommends, they themselves say that it's still an uncertainty. So it's a sad case of affairs, but we'll continue to pry, we'll continue to probe to get answers about this whole COVID-19 situation and the vaccines available or those being worked on, and what exactly is the FDA stance. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Depth, Not Just Headlines. Remember to subscribe. I'm Deborah.